I believe my 24F husband, 24 male, and his stepsister, 23F, are having an affair. My head is spinning and I don't know what to do. My husband's parents got divorced when he was 15 and his dad remarried when he was 17. His stepmom has one daughter, let's call her Jess, who was 16 at the time of the marriage. They all lived together for about a year and a half before he left for college, which is where him and I met freshman year. Our sophomore year, Jess began going to the same school as us. He introduced her to our friend group and she quickly became a part of it. They always seemed more like friends than siblings because obviously their parents didn't marry till they were older, but they'd sometimes refer to each other as bro and sis. Back then I sometimes got the vibe that she was flirting with him, but he never returned it and I just brushed it off as her personality and that I was being crazy. BC, no way that would happen. Fast forward to now, we all still live in our hometown and see each other pretty often. Jess is single and hasn't had a boyfriend in several years. Her and my husband are still very close. When we are all hanging out together, including their parents, if we're sitting on the couch she will sit right up against him, sometimes even put her head on his shoulder if he's showing her videos on his phone. I have always found it odd but again have brushed it off. Of course they aren't actually related but it would still be too taboo and weird, so I've never fully let myself have the suspicions. However, over the last 6 months things have been getting weirder. Both my husband and I's birthdays are in April and only a week apart, so over the last couple years we've kind of just combined them and celebrated both at the same time. We had friends and family over, and normally we also receive joint gifts, but this year Jess got my husband something specific to him, fairly expensive gaming headphones and a watch, but nothing for me, and she also got him a card and wrote a decent amount in it. I didn't get to read it when we were opening things and then later on I couldn't find it. When I asked my husband where it was he brushed it off saying oh he must have accidentally thrown it out with its envelope, but the envelope was still with everything else on the counter. They've been texting a lot more and she's also been talking to me less. Remember, her and I have been friends for the last 5 years. Sometimes I'll see texts from her pop up on his phone screen and there will be emojis. This will be while he's holding it and he'll unlock it pretty fast, so I've never really been able to see what they say. If I ask her to meet up or hang out with just me, she's always busy. But if it's her coming over our home to see the both of us, she never says no. He also has been going to see her more often, which is kind of a complicated detail. BC, she still lives at home with her mom and his dad, so he just tells me he's going to hang out with his dad for a bit, but I have a feeling it's for her. Him and I have also been less intimate lately. Neither of us have ever had super high sex drives, but we have always averaged at least twice a week, and now it's about 2 to 3 times a month. What's pushed me over the edge is when we all got together this past July 4th. We were at my Phil's house for a big cookout/pool party. While in the pool she kept hanging on him from behind. Picture him giving her a piggyback ride in the water, splashing him, being overly playful, etc. I kept thinking in my head I was crazy because maybe after all these years they really do have a sibling-like dynamic and she's just messing around. But I also caught her staring at me when my husband and I were being close and she looked angry. Now, cut to the worst of it all. We all were done in the pool and went inside to change. I was with my husband in his room and right in the middle of us changing she came in without knocking, randomly asking if she could borrow my hairbrush. My husband didn't have any clothes on. I was horrified and said something like you need to knock first. She seemed unfazed and lazily covered her eyes saying oh whatever, he's basically like my brother. My husband seemed kind of embarrassed but also not as much as you'd expect. She left like it was nothing. Since then she has barely spoken to me at all and I am absolutely spiraling at the thought of this. Am I being crazy? I haven't said anything to him yet about this because I'm so scared to be wrong and then I'm just accusing him of sleeping with his stepsister. I need others to tell me if they agree with what I've been seeing or not. Small update, thank you to everyone who has responded. When I made this post I was hoping for validation of my worries but also scared of that at the same time. I'm trying to keep it together and act normal around him the best I can. Tomorrow he's going over his dad's, so he says, so I plan to show up there and see what's going on. Another slight update because I know you guys are invested. An update but not really. Yes, I did go to his dad's house Saturday. A lot has happened since then and I haven't been on my phone much. When I get time later tonight I will post a full update of what's gone on. I will most likely make a new post about it because it's been hard keeping up with the comments on this one. Bear with me as I get my head sorted out. I'm worried to do it this way because if their texts are totally innocent / I find nothing, I'll have to tell him why I wanted to see it and I'll seem nuts. He's got an iPhone and a MacBook where his texts are synced up, so I might try to get a hold of his MacBook and read them on my own first. He uses his laptop for work mostly though and has a password on it, so I'll have to come up with some excuse about needing to borrow it. This is what I haven't been sure of because I have siblings but 2 sisters, no brothers. Also with step-siblings I have no idea if it's a different dynamic, especially since they didn't live together for very long since they were older. Update 1. To say that our family has totally imploded since I last posted would be an understatement. So much has happened that I never expected or was prepared for, so I apologize that I kind of ghosted all of you, but this has been really hard. Just an FYI, I'll be mentioning text messages a fair amount and it'll be paraphrasing. Leaving off from my last update, I did go to his dad's house that weekend that my husband told me he was going to see him. When I got there, only my husband's car was in the driveway. I wasn't sure what to do, if I should try calling his dad, calling my husband or what. I decided to just go in because I didn't want to play games. I walk in and hear his and Jess' voices coming from the kitchen and it sounded like they were yelling. Even now I couldn't tell you what they were saying. I was so full of adrenaline as I approached them, it was like I was watching them on mute or something and not actually hearing what was happening. He spotted me and looked like a deer in the headlights, and all I could muster up was to say, "What's going on?" I stared at them for a couple seconds and then my fight or flight kicked in. I'm very non-confrontational, so my instinct was to turn around and run. He chased after me and pulled me into a guest room to talk. Again I asked what was going on, that he's been acting so weird and so has Jess, and point blank asked if he was cheating on me. He seemed shocked at the question but then out of nowhere started bawling his eyes out. I've never seen my husband cry before. He said that no, he's not cheating but has something to tell me but couldn't do it there and needed to leave / for us to go back to our house. At first I protested and said no, I needed to know right then and there, but he still was having a breakdown begging me, so I agreed. We left his car there and drove home together in mine, but I sat in silence the whole ride as he cried and was trying to collect himself. When we got home we sat in the living room and I once again asked him what the fuck was happening and my patience had run thin. Then out came his word vomit. He told me that in college, our junior/Jess sophomore year, after him and a bunch of our friends had gone to a party, we were dating by this time but I wasn't there that night. I'd come home for the weekend to hang out with family that was in town, and he got really drunk. Our guy friends kind of ditched him to go hook up, so Jess offered him to crash on her couch for the night. Our school had on-campus apartments and she had a single BC, she was an RA. He said he woke up at some point after that, with his pants down and her on top of him, having sex. He told me at the time he felt out of it and didn't really get what was happening, and that's all he remembers was waking up and feeling it / seeing her. He then woke up again a couple hours later and she was asleep in her own bed, so he left and went back to his own dorm. He never told anyone. It took him a long time to even fully understand what had happened, and he felt like he couldn't tell anybody because 1, he felt ashamed and embarrassed, 2, he didn't think anyone would believe him, 3, he didn't want to be known as the guy that slept with his stepsister, 4, he was afraid of losing me, and 5, he was worried about his dad and if he found out that it could affect or ruin his new marriage and that his dad is so happy with his stepmom. He told me he basically just acted like nothing happened, even around Jess when we all hung out together. He said him and her never spoke about it or said anything until a couple years later, when him and I got engaged after graduation. She sent him a text essentially saying she loved him and thought about that night all the time and that why did their parents have to meet and get married, they could be together otherwise, etc. Essentially she is obsessed with him. Shamefully I will admit when he first told me all of this I wasn't sure what to think or believe, until I saw their text messages. I questioned him saying if this was the case why are they always talking, why wouldn't he distance himself now that we're married and out of school? He told me it started up again with her, about 6 months ago like I said on my original post, when him and I told our families that we decided we wanted to try for a baby. He had a screenshot of the text she sent him the next day ranting about how he shouldn't do this. Marriages aren't permanent until a baby comes into the mix, there's still a chance for them to be honest with their family and for him to leave me, she still loves him after all this time, etc. He replied saying he loved me and wanted to start a family with me and that he didn't love her in that way, and he never wanted her to bring this up to him ever again. That's when her demeanor changed and she said if he didn't love her, why did he f/ck her and what would their family think, essentially blackmailing him. I read through as many of their texts as I could handle and it was always her saying things like she was thinking about him, she wants to see him, she'd even send texts while we were all together telling him he looks good in that outfit. Sometimes he wouldn't reply and others he'd be trying to have a normal convo / steer it in a different direction, and sometimes just telling her to stop it. The days he's told me he's going to hang out with his dad, it's her begging him to go over there so she can see him or she will tell her mom everything. So he'd agree to go but he swears nothing has ever happened, that one of their parents would be there a majority of the time and it would just be all of them on the patio or in the living room. That day, he went there to tell her he was sick of it and couldn't do it anymore, she could tell people whatever she wants but he was done, and that's why they were yelling. I sat there taking it all in and honestly was speechless as I did not expect any of this. I asked him about our sudden lack of intimacy, essentially only during my fertile window since we're trying for a baby but never any other time, and he said all of this being brought up for him mentally has made him shut down about sex. He was only doing it for me I want a baby. That it's taken him so long to realize / come to terms with the fact that she assaulted him. And how this harassment. I cried. I felt betrayed by her and then a heavy, deep empathy for him. I just hugged him and cried and he cried too. I told him he really needs to tell his dad because we can no longer associate with her in any way, and how can we manage that when she lives with him? At first he said no, he couldn't because he's worried they won't believe him and also doesn't want to ruin his dad's life because how could the marriage with his stepmom survive this? I told him I don't have an answer for that, he has to trust that his dad will believe him and I was also worried about her panicking after their argument and doing something crazy. He agreed to tell his dad and said he wanted to do it alone. The following weekend he met up with dad and told him everything, showed the text to him, etc. His dad believed him and like me was caught off guard and speechless. This led to him telling his wife and saying he was kicking Jess out, however his wife did not believe it. She claims my husband must have edited the text somehow, actual texts in the message app that you can scroll through, and it's Jess' number attached to the contact. Jess freaked out, saying none of it was true and he was the one who'd been harassing her. That's when my husband threatened to take it all to the police for an order of protection against her if she did not tell the truth, and she finally admitted to everything in an insane meltdown. His stepmom is horrified. His dad doesn't know if he can get past her not believing my husband and accusing him. We are currently in this weird limbo phase of the whole family on edge. Jess is still living there. His dad has demanded she leave and has given her 2 weeks instead of kicking her out on the spot in an attempt to try and salvage the situation with his wife. My husband and I are having lots of talks, trying to regroup. We've put trying for a baby on hold as he seeks therapy for this. He still is considering going to the police for the harassment. My heart is broken for him and also trying to come to terms with the truth, that Jess, who I've known for years, would do something like this. I was prepared to uncover an affair but never this. I'm not sure if there will be any more updates after this, maybe if my husband decides to pursue legal action. I want to say thanks to everybody who pushed for me to dig into my suspicions, otherwise this could have gone even further. I don't like to think of what could have happened. I probably left things out, so if people have questions I'll try my best to reply to comments. I've told him that he should because she's unstable. It scares me because she seems so totally normal, like this is the biggest shock of my life, learning her true behavior. And someone like that is totally unpredictable. He knows he needs to but is trying to mentally prepare, and I'm trying to not push him too hard because this has been a lot. I'm really hurt and overwhelmed. Her and I were close friends for so long, so I'm really battling how she betrayed him but me too. And I also feel guilty for having this back thought of feeling lied to by him, when I know this wasn't his fault. Now on to second story. Caught my boyfriend's secret when his friend slipped up at the bar. Now he's angry and our friends think I'm the problem. I, 26F, have been with my now ex-boyfriend Eric, 28 male, for 2 years. Overall, we've had a good relationship, nothing crazy, until last night when things completely fell apart. We were out at a bar with some of his friends, just having a normal night. Drinks, food, the usual. Eric and his friend Mark, 28M, were joking around, and Eric made a comment about how much Mark was eating. Something like, "Careful, Mark, you'll eat the whole damn bar." It seemed harmless at first, just typical guy humor. But then Mark looked right at me and said, "If only she knew." It was one of those moments where you instantly feel uncomfortable, like there's something going on behind your back. I had no idea what Mark was talking about, and the whole vibe at the table shifted. But before I could even react, Eric exploded. He went off on Mark, screaming at him to shut the fuck up, and even tried to get physical. His other friends had to hold him back. Mark didn't really react, which only made Eric angrier. The whole thing was awkward as hell, and we ended up leaving early. When we got back to my place, I couldn't stop thinking about that comment. So I asked Eric, what the hell did Mark mean by "if only she knew"? What don't I know? And instead of just answering me like a normal person, Eric lost it again. He started yelling at me, telling me to drop it and stop being paranoid. He was dodging every question, getting more pissed every time I brought it up. I wasn't trying to pick a fight, I just wanted to know what was going on. It felt like there was something important being hidden from me, and I wasn't about to let it slide. But every time I asked, he'd just get more defensive and angry. Finally, he stormed out of my apartment. He doesn't live with me, so I locked the door and called it a night. I didn't hear from him until this morning, and when I did, it was just more angry texts, telling me to drop it and leave him alone. At that point, I was done. I'm not going to sit around and be treated like I'm crazy for asking a simple question. I texted him back saying, "Gee, we're done, I need space, and if he can't be honest with me, then I don't want any part of this relationship." End of story. Now here's where it gets worse. He's been going around to our mutual friends, telling them that I left him for no reason and trying to make it seem like I'm the one who overreacted. Some of them have even reached out to me, saying I should have just let it go and that I'm blowing things out of proportion. I told them to mind their own fucking business. I don't care what they think, none of them were in that moment, none of them saw how he acted, and none of them have to live with the pit in their stomach that I've had since that weird-ass comment from Mark. I'm not about to stay in a relationship where I feel like something shady is going on behind my back. If Eric can't be straight with me after 2 years together, then what's the point? So, Reddit, Ida for leaving him over this? I get the distinct feeling that this is not the first time you've gotten on him about possible infidelity. You're right, sadly. A few months ago he was staying out late when going out with friends. I asked him about it. He stopped going out with his friends because "you want this, you don't want me to be happy." That's wild. I'm sorry you're going through this. I'd ask Mark or his mother for details. Mark messaged me saying sorry you have to deal with that before blocking me. I had to contact him. I'm guessing he said that in the restaurant in the first place because he wanted to warn you and your ex wouldn't tell you, but Mark's a coward. That's what I'm thinking as well. NTA, but also I think the situation didn't ask for a neurosurgeon to figure out. Based on the comment it seems pretty obvious that Eric used to, or may still have, be fat, and it obviously is a sensible point for him. Potentially he even was bullied by Mark for it, which is why he reacted to extremely angry and hot-headed on the matter. I think the context made it pretty clear, or that something along the lines was going on. That doesn't excuse him snapping at you, but you should get better at reading your partner's behavior, because I'm a goddamn guy and not the emotional type either, but unless you aren't the sharpest tool in the shed, these are the obvious first things that come to mind. Oop, thanks for your perspective. I get what you're saying about Eric possibly having a history with body image or being bullied, which might explain his reaction. But my point is that even if he has personal issues, it doesn't give him a free pass to lash out at me. I understand that men can have a tough time expressing their feelings, but relationships require open communication from both sides. I wasn't trying to poke at any insecurities, I genuinely wanted to know what was going on. When I asked him about Mark's comment, I expected a conversation, not an explosion of anger. It's not about being the sharpest tool in the shed, but rather about being in a relationship where both partners can talk openly without fear of being yelled at or dismissed. I've always tried to support him, and I want a partner who can communicate with me, especially when things get awkward. I appreciate your insight. It kinda seems like you just wanted a reason to leave. There must be something you're doing to make him act like that. If he's denying it, why don't you believe him? You're supposed to believe your partner over everything, and for your friends you could have been nicer to them. They are just worried. Mark probably just wanted to get into your pants, and you probably would have let him, judging off that you believed him over your own boyfriend. Oop. Wow, your comment is a prime example of how utterly clueless you are about relationships. This isn't about me wanting a reason to leave, it's about having the guts to walk away from someone who can't even communicate like a grown-up. If you think I should just sit back and accept Eric's insane outbursts as normal, and it's clear you've never been in a healthy relationship. Seriously, Eric's reaction was a complete overreaction. If you expect me to interpret his rage as love, you must be living in some fantasy world. I'm not a mind reader, and I'm not going to tolerate his childish behavior just because it makes him feel better. And your pathetic defense of my friends? They actually care about me, unlike you, who seems more interested in playing the white knight for some dude's toxic behavior. If Mark had a crush on me, that's his issue, not mine. I'm not the one who lost their cool and threw a tantrum, that was all Eric. By the way, I looked at your post history, and it's painfully obvious you have a deep-seated hatred for women because you got cheated on. Maybe it's time for you to shut up, since you clearly can't keep a woman around. You're just bitter and pathetic, and it shows. Before you come at me, do everyone a favor and take a long, hard look in the mirror. This isn't about me believing Mark over Eric, it's about refusing to let some dude's explosive temper dictate my worth. So why don't you crawl back to your sad little life and keep your toxic opinions to yourself? Update 2. I feel like I'm living in some kind of twisted nightmare, and the more I try to make sense of it, the worse it gets. Mark called me today while I was at work. I didn't expect him to call me because he was ignoring me. I stepped outside to take the call, and he told me something that I never in a million years could have prepared for. He told me that Eric has been putting other men's semen into my food, drinks, skincare, shampoo, conditioner, and even my toothpaste. I'm not exaggerating, I'm not being dramatic, that's what Mark said. Eric has apparently been hooking up with random men, having them finish into cups, and then using it in my meals and drinks like it's some kind of sick joke. Even as I write this, I'm still in complete disbelief. Who does that to someone? Mark said he found out about this a week ago, but for some reason, it took him that long to tell me. A week. I've been living my life, completely oblivious, trusting Eric, someone I loved, while this was happening behind my back. I feel so betrayed, so disgusted, and so violated. When I asked Mark if he and Eric were having an affair or if this was some sort of twisted thing between them, he swore they weren't, and he even made a gross comment about not wanting to touch Eric because who knows what diseases he has. That made my stomach turn. I'm getting tested for everything now because I don't know what's been in my body. When I got home, I went straight to the kitchen. Mark told me to check under the sink, and there they were, the cups. Hidden behind the cleaning supplies. I lost my shit. I threw out everything in the kitchen and bathroom, even stuff I knew wasn't touched. I don't care. Everything feels contaminated now. My home doesn't feel like a safe space anymore. Every time I walk into the kitchen, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I can't even function without my mind going to dark places, thinking about all the times I had no idea what was happening. I don't have any solid proof of this. It's just Mark's word and those disgusting cups, and I feel so powerless. If nothing can be done about this, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. How is this even legal? How can someone get away with something so vile? I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone again. This whole thing has been messing with my head in ways I can't even explain. I feel dirty. I feel like I've been violated on such a deep level, and there's nothing I can do to undo it. My mom wants me to check into a hospital just to make sure I'm okay mentally, and I'm honestly going to do it. I don't feel stable right now. I don't feel like myself. I'm scared I might hurt myself or someone else. Eric was eating the same food. He was eating the food that he had contaminated, right alongside me. Was it a kink? A trip? I don't even know anymore. All I know is that the man I thought I knew, the man I loved, is a complete stranger to me now. I can't believe I've been living with someone capable of something so vile. I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I don't know how I'm going to come back from this. How can he do this to me? I'm genuinely losing it. I'm a danger to myself. I won't be on. I'm going to check myself into the hospital. Oop, I understand now. I'm so sorry this happened to you. You didn't deserve this, no one does. I hope you can get the help you need. You are stronger than you know. I am so sorry this happened to you. You have to get the cups and everything out of the trash. Maybe your mom or a friend can do it and you have to go to the police with it as evidence. And if you can, get Mike to write everything in text for you. You have to get the cups and everything out of the trash. Maybe your mom or a friend can do it and you have to go to the police with it as evidence. And if you can, get Mike to write everything in text for you. I was wondering when someone was going to say take the cups and what Mark told you directly to the police. You have been sexually assaulted. That is the reality of this whole situation. Those cups need to be tested to see if they are actually semen. If so, charges need to be pressed. And not just the cups. The shampoos, toothpaste. All of it needs to go to the police station. He needs to be in jail if he was really putting stuff into your food. And honestly, he needs his ass beat too.